I could do a whole 20-minute video about the cultural significance of 2010s metalcore bands making mesh shorts and jogging in place in their videos. What's up, everybody? I am Finn McKenty. This is the Punk Rock MBA, and today we are here to talk about band merch because I have questions. How many people think Ramones and Misfits are clothing brands? How many 2000s hardcore kids still have a Bane hoodie hanging in the closet, reminding them of the good old days of trolling the B9 board? Or putting my business hat on, how much marketing and advertising value did bands like Converge, Cradle of Filth, and Man Overboard get from that iconic merch that you've seen people wearing 500,000 times? And what about the time Kendall Jenner wore a Slayer shirt? And why did every 2000s metalcore band think that they needed to make gold foil shirts, mesh basketball shorts, and girls' booty shorts? And a shirt with one of those hardcore type crowd shots with some cool slogan in varsity font? These are just some of the questions that I will do my very best to answer in this video. So don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay tuned. But first, I want to thank Clocks and Colors for sponsoring this video. They make really high quality handcrafted men's jewelry. They sent me this bracelet, this necklace, and this ring. And by the way, this is on my pinky because I gave them the wrong ring size. I don't suggest doing that unless you want to be the guy who wears pinky rings. If you've been thinking about how to impress that girl you met in the beer garden of the Summer Rock Festival, the one with thigh tattoos and a black craft shirt and one of those wide-brimmed witchy kind of hats, who uses the goth font in her Instagram bio, then today is your lucky day because they are offering a 20% off discount just for viewers of this channel. So what are you waiting for? Hit the link in the description and enjoy. And with that out of the way, let's get into it.
Maybe I should take it off because you don't even know why you're wearing that shirt. Take it off. You're a fake fan. You're not even cool.
Take it off! Let's start with the easy stuff, the classics of band merch. You know when you go to Target or Walmart and they have that little display of t-shirts with like the fake vintage Dunder Mifflin and Star Wars shirts? And there's usually a couple band shirts tucked in there, like Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin, that you only see on Costco dads or 7th graders in their classic rock phase. Well, we kind of have our own equivalents of those in the punk world, where the merch is maybe just a little bit better than the actual band. For example, Danzig. They have one of the coolest logos of all time, even if he did steal it from some random 80s comic book. It just looks cool as fuck on a shirt. I remember when Brandon from Bleeding Through would wear a Danzig shirt every single show when he was in 18 Visions. And I was like, damn, he looks so cool. I wish I could pull that off. But have you ever actually met somebody that listens to Danzig? And I might not go quite so far with the Misfits. We all probably listened to them when we were in 8th grade, and the Danzig era stuff is pretty good. But if I'm being honest, I do think that the logo is a bit better than the music. Even though Danzig also borrowed that logo, the guy may not have a lot of great original ideas, but he definitely knows what sells, because that logo has made him and the rest of the guys a lot of fucking money over the years by slapping it on everything from panties to bobbleheads to temporary tattoos.
And also we've got Danzig. Now this one could be serious, but makes me laugh.
And then there's another category of bands that are actually great and also just happen to have great merch designs that sold really well. I'd say the Ramones are the best example of this, who apparently actually did sell more t-shirts than records and kind of actually were a clothing company in some ways because they actually did rely on merch sales to make their living. And if you asked me maybe 15 years ago, I would have put Black Flag in this category too. Great band who also just happen to have a really great logo that looks awesome on a shirt. And their merch was ruined for me by the endless stream of lame-ass Black Flag parody shirts that ran that joke into the fucking ground. Just typing out another word in the Black Flag font over their logo is not a parody.
Can you name 3 Seosin songs?
And there's a closely related genre of merch here that I'll call Forever 21 core. This is like the Gen Z equivalent of the fake vintage Led Zeppelin shirt at Costco. All the shirts they sell in the like edgy rocker section of Forever 21 or H&M. Nirvana is probably the best example of this, like all the basic Visco girls that bought the smiley face shirt a few years ago, or as seen on Justin Bieber. And speaking of Justin Bieber, can we talk about how cringe that whole thing is of people getting super butthurt anytime some celebrity wears a band shirt? I love this because it sort of shows how simultaneously arrogant and and yet tremendously naive these rock elitists can be. Like the idea that Nirvana is some obscure band that he couldn't possibly know about. Nirvana has sold over 75 million albums. They had 4 Billboard #1 albums, and he has been a professional musician his entire adult life. I don't think it's a stretch to say that he might actually like Nirvana or that Lady Gaga might actually like Iron Maiden.
Hello guys, today we're going to talk about the top 5 band shirts that are abused by posers.
And besides which, what if they are just wearing it because they think it looks cool and they don't know anything about the band? So what? It only helps the band when people buy their merch and get the name out there, right? So I have to think that when people lose their shit over this, it's because they've based their whole identity around being the guy who really likes Iron Maiden. And so when Justin Bieber steps on their turf, they get threatened, which is understandable. We've probably all been that guy at some point or another. But remember, listening to a band is not a substitute for having a personality. And if Demi Lovato wears a shirt of a band you like, it's not hurting you.
I don't really fucking care. I'm like, that's another person wearing like a Metallica shirt or a Slayer shirt.
But enough about Justin Bieber and Lady Gaga. Let's get into the real shit. The scene equivalents of all the stuff that I just mentioned. The merch items who became bigger than the band who actually made them. The first thing that comes to mind here is the Bane hoodie. As seen on every single East Coast hardcore kid in the early to mid 2000s, usually with a pair of Saucony Jazz and their keys on a carabiner. I was guilty of both of those, although I never had a Bane hoodie. Or its close cousins, the American Nightmare AN hoodie, or the On Broken Wings Mosh hoodie. All of which are great examples of something that I think a lot of people don't really know about merch design. It's usually the simplest stuff that sells the best. For example, when I was a t-shirt designer for Hollister, the best-selling items just about every single week were the logo in white on a simple neutral color like navy or gray. Most of the time, that's all people want. That being said, there are some exceptions. For example, that weird period in the late 2000s when neon cartoon monster merch was like the default for every band. I really don't have an explanation for that. I think it was some sort of glitch in the simulation where the algorithm got confused and made kids want these like full chest 8-color prints of like dinosaurs puking or whatever. Another great example of how a simple design can be so effective is Converge's Jane Doe merch. God only knows how much money they have made from that image over the years and how many chubby bearded guys who have that tattooed somewhere on their body. And good for them. Jake Bannon is obviously a very talented designer and they were smart enough to realize what they had and make the most of it. Because if you ever do find one piece of imagery or branding that really clicks with people like that, that can keep your band top of mind for years and years and years because you see their shit at every show and every photo shoot, all over social media, and what better marketing is there than that? So if you're in a band or really if you have any business of any kind, do not half-ass your branding. Because the cold, hard truth is that most of the time it's not the person with the best product that wins, it's the person with the best marketing and branding that wins. Speaking of which, we have to talk about the Man Overboard Defend Pop Punk shirt, which is as synonymous with 2010's Tumblr sad boy pop punk as the Jane Doe logo is with bearded dudes who like vegan donuts and craft beer. The Defend Pop Punk thing was really cool and fun at first until, again, people ruined it with 500,000 dumb, unfunny parodies, just like the Black Flag logo. Especially considering that, as far as I recall, the Defend Pop Punk shirt is a parody of the Most Precious Blood Defend Hardcore shirts, which were also a parody of the Defend Brooklyn shirts from a few years before that. Welcome to postmodernism, guys. Layers on layers on layers. Two more things that I thought of while I was editing this. Number one, to write love on our arms. Speaking of side print shirts, those were kind of a fixture back in, I don't know, 2011 or whatever. Other brand that I was learning about, I don't even know how to say this, it's like ST Heart. I used to see that on all those like Ohio metalcore bands, but I know nothing about it. If anybody knows the story of that one, let me know in the comments. This is a mystery that we need to solve. The classic Nails shirt is another great example of super simple merch that worked really well. It's just the name of the band typed out in an old English font, but it looks cool as shit, and I'm sure they sold a fucking ton of these. But when I think of the all caps old English logo thing in metal, the first name that comes to mind here, to me, is Burzum, who I think kind of popularized this. Which reminds me of this thing I did on Metal Sucks back in 2011 where I designed a bunch of fake Burzum merch. You've got some Burzum yoga pants, a bottle opener, some panties, a duffel bag. But personally, my favorite item is the basketball jersey with a pot leaf on it. It's kind of crazy how even though I made these for a joke in 2011, looking at it now, it's really funny how much they just look like 2017 streetwear. And I'm sure if they actually made those sweatpants, they would have made so much fucking money. Varg, you blew it. You should have listened to me, but no, you were too busy doing karate in your backyard. Let's get a party going, let's get a party going. And speaking of offensive metal bands, probably the most successful band of all time in that department, at least in extreme metal, is probably Cradle of Filth, who had the Jesus is a C word shirt way back in I think 95 or 96, which I truly think was responsible for a big chunk of their success in the beginning. Nobody was doing stuff that offensive in the 90s, and it got them in all kinds of headlines in relatively mainstream press outlets that would otherwise never have covered a black metal band.
This here is the t-shirt I was arrested for.
Again, this is the value of a really great piece of merch. So don't half-ass it. Put in the time to make something great. Whether you like it or not, at this point in time, designing great merch and branding is part of your job as a musician. Either do it yourself or find other people who can do it for you. You can see the value here with bands like Converge and Cradle of Filth. And I could keep going forever here. I mean, I could do a whole 20-minute video about the cultural significance of 2010's metalcore bands making mesh shorts and jogging in place in their videos, and how that represented the moment that metalcore completely lost its connection to hardcore punk. And I could bring up the mid-2000s trend of side print shirts and how I thought that was the coolest fucking thing of all time, but I was too scared to actually wear them. Or I could ask the question that we've all been wondering since 2010, who is the girl that modeled the Winds of Plague booty shorts? But this video is already long enough, and I want to make sure that I leave room to talk about what's actually most interesting to me, just kind of the bigger picture of how the band merch game has evolved since I was a kid, when it was something that nobody really cared about. It was just like, oh yeah, I'll buy a band shirt, why not? Into something that now sometimes actually overshadows the music, and what that means for bands from a business perspective.
Dripping is a 9-to-5 job, you know. I'm a weatherman out here because it's 100% drip, 100% daily.
First of all, let's just recognize that the fact that you can now just go online and be able to just buy merch from anybody all over the world is amazing for both fans and bands. Back in my day, I'm talking like early to mid 90s, you basically had two options. Number one, you could buy it at the show, which is cool if you lived somewhere that had a lot of shows and you were old enough to get in and had the money and all that. If not, like most of us, your main option was mail order. Usually from a catalog that was stuffed into the insert of a cassette from a company like Blue Grape, who did a lot of the merch for like Earache and Roadrunner bands back then. The like badly fitting obituary shirts that hypecore kids now pay $180 for on eBay. You would put cash or a check in an envelope, put a stamp on it, drop it in the mailbox, and hopefully several weeks or months later, you'd get your order. I'd say there's like a 50-50 chance that you would just get ripped off. And when you did get it, you're probably bummed because they usually fit like this. Like a weird cropped baby tee that was like 6 inches too wide and 3 inches too short. But you didn't complain because that was your only option. Whereas these days, everybody is a t-shirt snob and a garment expert.
What kind of blanks are those printed on?
Miss me with those Gildens, bro.
Come back when you got some real merch.
For example, the shitstorm a couple months ago with Counterparts Hoodiegate scandal. For those who didn't see it, they put out a limited edition hoodie with embroidered graphics that was $100, which is obviously a lot of money for a hardcore band's hoodie. But on the other hand, they were on Champion hoodies. And as they explained, embroidery is really expensive, especially at small quantities like that. So that's just how much they had to charge in order for it to make sense. I would imagine they probably didn't even really make money on them. But who cares? Facts and logic never stopped hardcore kids from getting angry and bringing out the torches and pitchforks. If you try to keep prices down, they complain about quality. If you go for quality, they complain about prices. You really just can't win with the merchcore kids. I forgot to mention my biggest pet peeve with the merchcore people is that no matter what the content of a photo is, if you post it online, they will comment on your shirt 100% of the time. It could be, hey guys, here's a picture of me the last time I saw my father alive. And they're gonna be like, dude, sick Pennywise shirt. But all of that is to say that I find it fascinating how band merch has almost taken on this kind of like hypebeast dynamic. For those who aren't familiar, hypebeasts are the kind of kids you've seen who wait in line for like 19 hours to get limited edition Supreme gear or whatever, and then take a picture of it on Instagram for bragging rights and immediately go sell it on eBay or StockX for a profit. I never thought I'd see the day when that would happen with band merch, but here we are.
You a fan of the Yankees?
Never. Hate baseball. Shit is trash.
Why are you buying it?
Because it's supreme.
For example, the infamous Sanrio hoodie by a relatively small hardcore band called Gulch. I'm not really sure why, but people waited in line all day for this when they played a festival, and they ended up going for hundreds of dollars on reseller sites. Or the Vane windbreaker that everybody lost their shit for like a year before that. which on the one hand is a little bit annoying because that kind of just rabid consumerism is kind of gross and seems a little bit out of place in the scene. But ultimately, I think it's a great thing for bands because of the opportunities that it opens up for them. You're starting to see this with some of the bands that are almost running things like it's a streetwear brand and turning e-commerce into a very viable part of their business. I mean, look no further than my friends at Ice Nine Kills, who made almost $2 million in merch last year. And shout outs to my friends Mike Cortado, who does a lot of the artwork, and their manager Mike Mowry. Awesome team over there, so I'm not surprised to see them have so much success. But it's definitely not just them. There's also smaller bands like 100th or Grayscale or Silent Planet who are killing it with merch and putting stuff out that you might wear even if you don't know or care about the band, just because it's nice looking product. So the takeaway here is that if you're in a band, lean into this. This is a huge opportunity. Find people who can do great artwork, learn how to run a Shopify store, learn how to run Facebook and Instagram ads, and you're good to go. You can make a ton of money without ever even playing a single show. The importance of understanding this part of your business has never been more obvious than it is this year, when all the bands who relied on touring for the income are really hurting, compared to the bands who have a great merch business where it doesn't hurt nearly as bad that they can't go out on the road. So the bottom line is, whether you like it or not, merch has never been more important than it is now. And as somebody who loves both design and business, I personally think that's awesome, and I hope to see more bands embrace it. So all I ask is this. I know trends are cyclical, they come and go, so can we please get to the revival of foil print shirts, mesh shorts, and edgy slogans and impact font as soon as possible? Is that so much to ask?
I want to get overpriced clothing that show that I make a lot of money.
All right, my friends, that does it for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Which of these trends were your favorite, least favorite? What do you think about this idea of a band as a clothing brand that's kind of starting to happen? And remember, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. A lot of people have told me they're not getting notifications. I also want to thank everybody who supports us on Patreon, especially those of you who support at the True Cult level or above. It is because of your support that we're able to do a lot of things here. For example, the podcast. That's how I pay our producer and editor who makes the whole thing happen. Members get every podcast a week early. There's a members only private Discord server that I'm in all the time. I started doing patron only Q&As if you want a detailed answer to one of your questions. There's also a way for me to review your music or video or design work or whatever else. So if that sounds interesting, hit the link in the description. And with that, I'm going to sign off for now, but I will see you next time.